the spotlight position with hidden struggles. When most people think of wide receivers, they imagine speed, flashy catches, and highlight reels filled with spectacular touchdowns. On the surface, being a wide receiver looks glamorous. After all, they're often the stars who get the ball and electrify the crowd. But what fans don't see are the endless frustrations, the physical pain, and the constant blame that wide receivers carry. Behind every highlight, there are countless moments of suffering that make this one of the toughest and most thankless roles in football. Living with unrealistic expectations. Wide receivers are expected to be perfect athletes, fast enough to outrun defenders, strong enough to break tackles, and precise enough to run flawless routes every single play. A single dropped pass, even in tough coverage, can erase all the good plays they've made. Fans and coaches expect receivers to catch everything thrown their way, even if the ball is off target, sailing over their heads, or fired into double coverage. The pressure is suffocating, because any mistake is amplified under the bright lights. Depending on the quarterback. Unlike other positions, wide receivers are at the mercy of their quarterback. No matter how well they run their routes or how open they get, they can't control whether the ball actually comes their way. They can spend an entire game sprinting, breaking free from defenders, and still never get a single target if the quarterback doesn't look their way. This helpless dependence creates endless frustration, because their performance often relies more on someone else's decisions than their own effort. The physical toll of route running. Every play, wide receivers are expected to sprint at full speed, explode off the line, cut sharply, and fight through defenders. Even on plays where the ball isn't coming their way, they have to run their routes to sell the play. Over the course of a game, this adds up to miles of sprinting, constant collisions, and bone-jarring hits. By the fourth quarter, receivers are drained, yet they're still expected to maintain peak speed and focus. Facing the most athletic defenders. Cornerbacks are often the fastest, most aggressive players on the field, and their only job is to shut receivers down. Wide receivers have to constantly fight through press coverage, hand-checking, and physical contact while trying to keep their routes clean. The battle is relentless. Every yard is earned through struggle. Even when they beat their defender, there's always the looming threat of a safety waiting to deliver a crushing hit. The pain of big hits. Receivers are some of the most vulnerable players in football. When they leap into the air for a pass, they expose their ribs and backs to brutal hits from defenders. A safety timing the collision can leave a receiver gasping for air, or worse, dealing with broken bones and concussions. These highlight catches come at a price that fans rarely consider, the physical toll of repeated punishment that leaves receivers battered and bruised. Dropped passes define you. For quarterbacks, a single interception might be forgiven if they throw multiple touchdowns. For receivers, one dropped pass can overshadow an entire game of excellence. No one remembers the difficult catches in traffic or the yards after the catch. What people remember is the one time the ball slipped through their fingers in a critical moment. The unforgiving nature of the position means that receivers live in constant fear of being remembered for their mistakes instead of their successes. Blocking without recognition. While receivers dream of making catches, a huge part of their job is blocking. On running plays, they're expected to hold their ground against bigger, stronger defenders to open lanes for their teammates. It's a thankless task that almost never gets recognition. Fans cheer for the running back's touchdown but rarely acknowledge the receiver who risked injury by taking on a linebacker downfield. Constant criticism from all sides. Receivers live under a microscope. Coaches criticize them for running routes too shallow or too deep. Quarterbacks blame them when passes fall incomplete. Fans boo when they don't make a spectacular catch. Even analysts question their effort, body language, and attitude. The criticism is constant and often unfair, as receivers rarely get credit for the countless plays where they execute perfectly but don't get the ball. The stigma of being diva players. Wide receivers have developed a reputation for being divas in football culture. Anytime they show frustration about not getting the ball, they're labeled selfish or problematic. But in reality, their complaints often come from the genuine struggles of being overlooked, blamed, and physically punished for plays outside their control. This unfair stereotype haunts many receivers, painting them as dramatic even when they're just passionate competitors. Injuries that haunt careers. Because receivers rely so heavily on speed and explosiveness, even minor injuries can derail their performance. A hamstring strain, an ankle sprain, or a torn ACL can rob them of the very skills that make them dangerous. Unlike bigger positions that can still rely on strength, receivers lose their effectiveness the moment their speed disappears. Many careers end prematurely because their bodies simply can't handle the repeated sprints, cuts, and hits. Always the scapegoat. When the offense struggles, receivers are often blamed first. Analysts say they didn't get open, didn't fight for the ball, or didn't put in enough effort. Even when the real problem is bad play calling, poor quarterback decisions, or weak blocking, the wide receiver becomes the easiest target. It's a role that attracts both glory and blame, but more often than not, the blame overshadows the glory. The price of glory. Being a wide receiver looks glamorous on highlight reels, but behind the fame is endless suffering. They are the ones running themselves into exhaustion, taking brutal hits, and living with blame for things they can't control. They fight through defenders, injuries, and stereotypes, all for the chance to make a play that fans will remember. It's a role built on sacrifice, and while the spotlight shines on their touchdowns, the struggles of being a receiver show why this position often feels like one of the hardest in football.